You are listening to What in the Horror with your hosts Lando and Tim.
Welcome back to yet another episode of What in the Horror with your hosts Lando and Tim. Today we will be reviewing Poltergeist from 1982 and From Beyond from 1986. So we will start with my movie first, Poltergeist from 1982. In the suburban housing development in California, the homes are modern and comfortable. Steve Freeling is a successful real estate agent who works for a firm headed up by Teak. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it. Steve lives in one of the homes with his wife, Diane, and their three children, teenager Donna, preteen youngsters, Robbie, and Carol Ann. Strange events begin to occur when Carol Ann begins sleepwalking and carries on a seemingly one-sided conversation with a TV set that's turned on but has no signal. Soon thereafter, her pet bird dies, and the family conducts a small burial service. Later that night, Carol Ann awakens again and talks to the television, while a spectral manifestation erupts from the television screen and enters the walls, causing a violent tremor that only the Freelings feel. As the family wakens up, Carol Ann mysteriously announces they're here, which is a pretty famous line from the movie. The next morning, drinking glasses just break during breakfast and utensils bend by themselves. When Diane asks Carol Ann who she meant when she said they're here, she answers the TV people. At first, the ghost plays harmless tricks and amuses the mother, including moving and stacking the kitchen table chairs. Diane and Carol Ann discover an area in the kitchen where an unseen force will pull anything, including people, across the floor. When he arrives home from work, Diane convinces Steve the phenomenon is real by demonstrating it. He then announces that nobody's going into the kitchen until I know what's happening. During a terrible thunderstorm, a tree outside the kids' bedroom window suddenly comes to life and grabs Robbie, Carol Ann's brother, through the window. However, this is merely a distraction used by the ghost to get Carol Ann's parents to leave her alone. Using force like a wind tunnel, they take Carol Ann through her bedroom closet into their dimension. Steve rescues Robbie, and the family believes that a tornado caused the trouble, until they realize that they can't find Carol Ann anywhere. They search the whole entire house, including the pit, for the new swimming pool, until Robbie hears Carol Ann calling for her mother eerily through the TV. The traumatized Steve meets with a small group of ghost people, pretty much, stating that we just want to find our little girl. Dr. Lesh, Ryan, and Marty are obstructed by the manifestations they witness. With them present, Steve shows them things they've never seen before. He opens the door to the children's room to reveal toys and objects flying around by themselves and disembodied laughing voices throughout the room. Previously, Ryan described a Matchbox car taking 7 hours to move 7 feet, calling it fantastic. Of course, this would never register on the naked eye. After they see the Freelings' house, they are all humbled. Over coffee, they explain to the Freelings the difference between a poltergeist and a haunting. They determine that indeed it is a poltergeist that they are experiencing. The group witnesses several paranormal episodes where they hear Carol Ann talking to Diane through the TV, see spirits, and hear pounding footsteps of some terrible force, which, of course, injures Marty. Marty also suffers from terrifying hallucinations where he seems to tear off his own face. They leave with the exception of Ryan, admitting they need more help. Shaken and overwhelmed, Donna leaves to stay with friends. The Freelings also send Robbie to his grandmother's house for his safety. Later that day, Steve has a conversation with his boss about a new housing project going up. They talk about how Steve's company has built over cemeteries in the past, even where the Freelings live now. Whenever the company needed land to build or expand housing communities. They'd moved the cemeteries, coffins, headstones, and all. His boss shows Steve a new housing development the company is building not far from where the Freelings live. As the two walk by a hillside cemetery, his boss tells Steve that he can have a new house right in that spot with a large bay window overseeing the valley. Steve remarks that the house can't simply be built over a cemetery. His boss tells Steve that the company has moved the whole cemeteries before. The coffins were digged up and moved along with their headstones to new locations nearby. His boss then reveals that much of the town was built on the location of one of these relocated cemeteries. Steve seems quite established at the news, stating that that's nuts, pretty much, he said. When the ghost people return, they bring a medium whose name I can't pronounce, a tiny woman who uses her psychic sensitivity to find the facts about the disturbances. She tells them that Carol Ann is alive in the house. According to her, the spirits haunting the home have left this life but have gone to the spectacle known as the light. They stuck in between dimensions, watching their loved ones grow up, but feeling alone causing them to feel lonely and even angry. Carol Ann was born in the house and has the strongest connection to it. At only 5 years old, she gives off her own life force that is as bright as the light. It distracts and confuses the spirits, who think Carol Ann is their salvation. Hence, they have taken her. However, the medium also warns everyone that a evil spirit who exists in the next dimension. It likes that the spirits are confused and lost, and uses Carol Ann as a distraction so they cannot move into the light. She ends up telling them it lies to her and tells her things only a child can understand. To her, it simply is another child. To us, it is the beast. They realize the entrance to the other dimension is through the children's bedroom closet. The medium tests the dimension burial with a few tennis balls that drop through the living room ceiling below the kids' closet. By tying a rope around a live person who can enter and exit the other side, with enough time to grab Carol Ann, they can bring her back. She intends to be the one to go into the light, but Diane insists, saying that Carol Ann will only come to her mother. With the rope around her waist, Diane goes into the portal, and the medium coaxes the other spirits away from Carol Ann to the real light. While the medium is in her trance-like state, telling the lost spirits to cross over into the light, Steve panics and pulls on the rope, meeting the beast face to face. Diane falls through the living room ceiling, clutching Carol Ann and bearing new streaks of gray hair, which they probably think it's from fright or something. Both Diane and Carol Ann are also covered in ectoplasm. After Steve revives both of them in the downstairs bathtub, the medium announces that the house is clean. Unfortunately, the spirits have seemingly moved on. The beast hasn't and wants revenge. On their final night in the house, Steve leaves Diane alone with the children so he can go and talk to his boss, who is trying to get Steve to consider leaving. While Robbie and Carol Ann are getting ready for bed, Robbie's clown doll comes to life and pulls him under the bed. Diane, relaxing in the master bedroom, hears her son's screaming voice and tries to investigate, but is pulled against the wall and the ceiling by unseen force. Robbie manages to rip the clown doll to pieces, but a strange mouth-like portal appears to Carol Ann's closet and attempts to suck the children in. Diane tries to get to her son and daughter, but runs into the beast itself in the form of a snarling skeletal demon. It blocks Carol Ann's and Robbie's door and lunges at her, causing her to fall from the stairs. Diane runs to the backyard to seek help from her next-door neighbors, but slips into the freshly dug swimming pool. A rainstorm has filled it up with rain, mud, and as Diane tries to escape, coffins begin erupting from the earth, releasing skeletal corpses into the pool. Her neighbors hear the commotion and arrive to help Diane out of the pool, but they refuse to enter the house and its windows now blazing with ghostly energy. Diane runs back into the house alone to get Robbie and Carol Ann. She finds Carol Ann and Robbie barely able to fight the energy that tries to suck them into the portal. They dangle from their bed frames, hanging on only by their hands while their feet sway towards the closet door. Diane manages to pull them to safety and they run from the house. Coffins and bodies begin exploding out of the ground through the house. Steve pulls up in his car with his boss as a passenger, and they both see the dead bodies erupting from the ground. Steve recalls the earlier conversation he had with his boss, where his boss revealed that the town was built over the site of a relocated cemetery. It is now obvious that his boss never really relocated the cemetery. He just simply built the housing on top of the graves and only removing the headstones. Realizing the truth, Steve rebuks him in anger. Diane arrives in her boyfriend's car and hysterical over what's happening to the house. The Freelands get into Steve's station wagon and they drive off. The beast grows so angry that the house implodes through the portal into the other dimension as stunned neighbors, including his boss, look on. The weary family checks into a hotel for the night, not wishing to tempt fate. Steve pushes the television outside of their room. And that's basically the end of the movie there. So before I give my overall thoughts, what are your thoughts there, Tim?
Good classic movie. I mean, the special effects obviously were early 80s. So for early 80s, I think they were done really well, actually, in comparison to a lot of them we've seen. You got your titties. Yep, you got that in this. No, you didn't. No, you almost did. That's right. On the bed, you almost did. You were right there, but not quite. But no, this is like, this is a rewatchable one over and over again, as well as a sequel, in my opinion. So this one here is a 5 out of 5 because you don't get much more classic. There's like a couple 80s movies that just hit that spot for me. Still worth a watch today. Yeah, you're going to be in a little different time zone area for it, but I didn't. I liked that when the daughter's screaming outside the car and won't get in the car, that she's got a hickey on her neck, and she knew about the hotel beforehand, the Holiday Inn, because apparently she's been there before. There's a lot of fun involved in parts of it. I kind of, if it wasn't for the scary parts at the end, I want that little like sliding effect thing where you just slide across the kitchen floor, because that looked like fun. But yeah. There was a little bit of gore here and there too, some good gore. It's almost like chunks of the ectoplasm look like it's kind of got gory grossness. The guy tears his face off. Yeah, 80s effects, but good. Yeah, 5 of 5 for me because I'd rewatch this over and over again.
Totally agreed. And Rotten Tomato actually agreed a little bit too, and they gave it an 87% with an audience score of 79. Google gave it a solid 83. This movie had a budget of $10.7 million and box office was a little over $121 in millions. But when it comes to my overall thoughts, the main thing I loved about this movie was the fact that they may or may not have used real dead bodies in this movie, in that pit and everything. So they may have done that. I've heard different stories. I love the story of this movie. Timeless classic. No blood, but the goriest parts of the movie are the dead bodies and the ghosts, I guess. The fact that there's a curse that came with this movie was pretty interesting. I mean, if you really think about it, the actress that played the older sister, she was actually murdered by her boyfriend, and the actress who played Carol Ann also died after the third film when she was only 12 years old from like some type of disease she ended up having. And also the brother in this film got hurt during that clown doll scene. So overall, I think the curse might be real if you really think about it. But overall, my rating for this movie is a solid 5. I mean, we totally agree on the 5 for 5 here. So with that being said, I think that will be it for Poltergeist from 1982. All right. So now that we're done with that movie, we will move on to Tim's, which again is From Beyond from 1986. So take it away, Tim.
All right, it starts off this weird resonator. It's called a resonator. You don't know what it is to begin with. And they walk into this room. A group of scientists developed this thing, a resonator machine, allows whoever is within range of it to see beyond normal perception of reality. Has something to do with the pituitary gland. So it's supposed to stimulate it. When the experiment succeeds, they're immediately attacked by terrible life forms that are just like brutally like violent. So Dr. Edward Pertuis and his assistant, the physician Crawford Tillinghast, weird names. Could have just named them Fred and John. It's fine, but have developed the resonator machine to stimulate the sixth sense through the pineal gland. Well, Crawford activates the apparatus. He's seeing flying creatures in the air, and he summons Dr. Pertuis. The experiment goes out of control the second time they start it, and Dr. Pertuis refuses to turn off the resonator. Meanwhile, the neighbor calls the police. When the police officers arrive, they see Crawford trying to escape from his house, and Dr. Pertuis is beheaded. Crawford is sent to a mental institution under supervision of the sadistic Dr. Block, who's apparently got quite the reputation. However, the prominent psychiatrist, Dr. Catherine McMichaels, requests the custody of Crawford and Detective Bubba Brownlee. But she's also got a reputation. The investigating case stays with them. The guy that just stays with them and keeps an eye on him. Catherine goes with Crawford and Bubba to see the resonator and turns the machine on. This is after, tripping over a thing, trying to find him because it's dark in there. Even though this is a weird spot, you can see just fine, but apparently the characters are walking in the dark. So interesting acting there. And then, Dr. Pretorius returns in his mutant shape. He looks kind of like him, but he's got some issues going on. And when his assistant reaches up and touches him on his shoulder, it's like gooey, and his fingers like go into his shoulder, his clavicle area. It's really strange. Well, the mutant shape starts to attack them in the beginning of the gore night with weird life forms. Unable to tame the unharnessed power of the resonator, managed to shut it off barely without getting too injured. Although the police officer guy that's in charge of the case that's with him, he actually gets bit in the arm by one of the flying. They look like eels, kind of electric eels. And then they go from the situation. One of the things that you don't realize is when they get attacked by everything, by these terrible life forms and stuff, they actually are also getting turned on. It must be like a side effect of the pineal gland, because there's like this weirdness at first before the doctor shows up. They are kind of like the police officer's really weirded out by it. The other two are actually kind of looking like they're going to get it on. Well, the machine gets shut off. They go and lay down in another room. The doctor insists that they have to turn it back on. You can tell that she's a little bit on the something's going on. It changed her a little bit, and she really liked the feeling. But they keep saying no, they're not going to do it. She does wind up talking them into turning it on again. They turn it on, and immediately they try to shut it off. The police officer cuts it, and all kinds of weird shit happens. But it during all this, he comes back. They shut it. They manage to damage it enough to shut it off this time, and then the doctor somehow from beyond is able to turn it on from the other side. While this is happening, the psychiatrist gets in this, because he had the doctor also had these sex tapes like things where he's like taking women and kind of abusing them to the point where they start screaming, which you find out a little bit more of later. But he has this like dungeon type setup in videos. Well, she gets into one of these outfits and tries coming on to his assistant and climbing up on top of him when as this machine comes back on its own, because she's getting extremely turned on. And the police officer is the one that notices it first and gets them all to go in the other room. During the last time, they went down the cellar to shut this off, is how they shut off, and where the power sources were after trying to shut it off upstairs. When they did this, the assistant actually has lost his hair at this point, because one of those big, different type of creature, looks like something out of Stranger Things, tries to engulf him whole. And apparently his hair actually did wind up disappearing. Well, this time he comes back and they really can't get the thing shut off. They're trying like crazy. They try everything, try pulling the cords, try yanking it, try to do all kinds of things. They cannot get this thing to shut off. The woman manages to get a bomb on it this time. It has a bomb that she had put on it, and it's going to blow up toward the end. wait a minute, skipping ahead. Sorry, trying to think because this part's mixed up. So they do end up getting shut off eventually. They have to go downstairs. They get the thing shut off, but they barely escape with their life. And unfortunately, in this situation, when this happened, the doctor actually bit off his assistant's head, like twisted it off and ate it, swallowed it down. So it's starting to come back on its own. She knows it's going to happen. She goes back there with a makeshift bomb. I don't know how this psychiatrist type person wound up learning how to make a bomb, but this thing looks legit with a timer and everything. Puts it on top. It all starts back up. Of course, the doctor comes back, and he's there, and Proteus and his assistant at some point starts to climb out of his mouth, but his whole body, even though only his head was taken. Again, very strange. But I guess that's what the doctor was saying about crossing over to the beyond. And during all this, it's a big fight. They had already lost the cop the last time because during all the fight, he actually got disintegrated completely. Like he's just like a swarm of like bug-like things tore him all apart. Well, these things were first scared of the light, then they were attracted to the flashlight. He shined on the others as they were getting eaten up by him, and it all wound up being destroyed on him. It just ate him all but his head, which was more for the effect, I think, than anything, because his head was still intact, but his body was all eaten. It was just bones. Well, she gets there, and the doctor tries to take her, and he comes out and holds him off for a minute while she gets a chance to try and escape, but doesn't get to escape. And then does this thing that learns to fly. It does all kinds of weird things. It can like morph into other things. His arms stretch, almost like if you ever watch Freddy Krueger, where his arms stretch out. It's that kind of thing, but in a creepier way. Well, that's all ends up running down. She finally gets out and gets away. The bomb blows up, and basically that's unfortunately kind of how it ends. It's this is where I feel like this movie is let down. One of the things that we got to talk about a little bit more too is that the pituitary gland, when they get to the evolved state, comes out of their forehead. The assistant at one point, when he was getting super like weird before he got eaten, she actually wound up biting it off his forehead. Is how she got him to wake back up from in the hospital after he had been eaten by the other thing partially and everything. The pituitary gland came out like a third eye, and he's seen almost like predator vision, like really weird. But he apparently was into pain at that point. Pain was like pleasure, creating pain. And one of the things he talked about to the other guy when this was out of his head was how the reason why he abused these women is because he was impotent. So that actually might lead to this psychologist side of why Dr. Pretorius actually was acting the way he was acting and was okay with this. But considering the assistant started falling prey to the same issue, the only thing was he was in love with the psychiatrist that he barely knew. It's all really kind of strange and unusual. I think the ending was great. Fight scenes, chasing scenes and stuff. There was a point where he tied her up. She had been tied up by the assistant and in like the bondage thing, and she wound up getting free as after he'd been killed. The creature was the doctor was coming at her and coming towards her and stuff, but she managed to get away because she got those eel things when she moved. They're attracted to movement, and they bit off the restraints. All really strange, discombobulated. I didn't tell it in order on purpose because of the fact that if I tell you this on purpose, it won't be worth a watch. But if I don't, this has some merit to it, which I'll get into when we go to the rating. Yeah, in general, this was out there even for the 80s, and the 80s did a lot of strange things. Yeah. So that said, what were your thoughts on this one, Lando? And what did the box office have to say?
Yeah, this one didn't have that high of a rating from Rotten Tomato. It had a 78 with an audience score of 70. Google gave it a 87%. The budget for this was $4,500,000, and it made sadly, it only made $1,261,000,000. So there's that. And then when it comes to my overall thoughts, has a pretty interesting story, even though the beginning of the movie was a bit confusing to me before the beginning credits even started. It just got into things right away that we don't really see that often in movies, especially back in the 80s. It was okay on blood, but oh my fucking god, the gore in this one, pretty fucking good for a movie that came out the year after I was born. Yeah, I also like the fact that this movie had titties. I mean, oh, yes, we got them from the lady in the videotape, and we also got them from Dr. Catherine McMichaels. And to be honest, I prefer hers because they were a little bit nicer. Anyways, I also thought it was pretty cool how this movie was based off of a H.P. Lovecraft book with the same name as the movie. But what I didn't like is that they killed Bubba, who is played by Ken Foree. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And he's one of my favorite actors. And some people out there might remember him being in the remake and the original Dawn of the Dead movies. Because in the original, he played one of the military guys that's held up in the mall. And then in the remake, he plays like a pastor on TV or on the TV. And he also worked on either one or two or more Rob Zombie films. So you might seen him in those. The ending went pretty well with the rest of the movie. I liked how she jumped out of the window just seconds before the bomb was to go off and ended up breaking what used to be her kneecap. And that was pretty gory right there. I was a bit confused on if she was screaming or laughing her ass off towards the very end of it all. And also kind of confused how the neighbors just showed up out of freaking nowhere. So with that being said, I gave this one a 4-skull rating.
The neighbors not showing up, and why did neighbors show up? They didn't show up to any of this other weird shit going on. All these noises, all this creepy stuff, and that resonating thing went beyond the house. So yeah, you have a point there. And I thought that maybe she was hysterically laughing because she started liking pain, but I'm not sure either. That was the ending, like I said, was a little confusing, but then again, she was changed. So yeah, I also gave this a 4-skull rating. It's worth a watch. It's different. The gore factor's up there. Yes, you got your titties, Lando, and just it's so different. Like the gore factor they did with actual like prosthetics and stuff. It's actually very interesting and gross. The doctor morphing into weird stuff like was weird. Mm-hmm. Okay, the flying part, that was not a must see. That was like the worst part of all of it, when he flew down off the stairs to attack the assistant and try to take off his head. Yeah, that part was always the worst part. But yeah, great movie. Both of them were good. Like I said, your movie was, to me, just that's a must see, like classic.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't give them the same rating.
Yeah, I mean, hell, I even have that movie on DVD and I watch it every now and again. I mean, if I had your movie on DVD, I'd probably barely watch it. It'd probably actually go into this little case that I have for DVDs that I never watch.
Now you just timestamp it for the titties. I know you.
Probably. But anyways, I think that'll be it for this episode. So if you have any movie suggestions, as always, you can email us at whatinthehorrorpodcast@gmail.com. We also have our Twitter that you can hit us up on. That's whatinthehorrorpodcast, all one word. You also got our Discord with only 10 people. That includes me and Tim. But as always, I've been your host, Lando.
And I've been Tim.
And we are the fuck out of here.
You were listening to What in the Horror. See you next time.